Alo. Vâng, xin lỗi ạ. Ok. Có. Bây giờ chắc anh lại phải nhờ anh Thường không chuyển lại cho em nhé. Ok, anh nhắn lại số của Thủy cho Thường nhé. Ok. Ok. Xong rồi có thể anh sẽ nhắn lại anh Thường, như là em có gì em thêm anh Thường của anh với nhé. Tên bọn anh là Sisdoma CI.
You just need a slap on the wrist with 5G interference. 5G interference, trust me, man. Once the nanochip kick in, it'll be fine. He will be Talamak eventually.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry for the confusion with the renaming themselves. We're trying to figure out from the back end, but perhaps if you want, you could also share your name and organization in the chat. I will try to keep track and edit the name as well. Your name, I mean. So I think it's already 5 past. If we could, maybe we could go to Anand. Okay, I'm sorry. I think now the settings has changed. If people can try. Okay, thank you, Denise, for confirming. Sorry for the confusion. Yeah, I think people can already start renaming. Okay.
After January.
In the meantime, we are working on the interpretation, I mean. So while we do that, I think we can already start the session 1.3, Land Inequality in Asia, Evident Experiences and Solutions. Thank you again for staying until now at the Asia Land Forum, the first day, day one. Happy to have you here. I am just going to give the floor to the moderator of the session, which is Anand Shukla from Oxfam India. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Anandita. Namaste and good evening, good morning. I don't know at what time zone you are, but as we know, the International Land Coalition Asia's annual Asia Land Forum is from 27th to 29th of October, and today we are here for this land inequality evidence, experience and solutions. So this is the session which will be for almost 1 hour and 15 minutes, and we have 5 different speakers. Just about the rules that I request all of you, if you are not speaking, just mute your mic please, and put your question in the chat box whenever you have question, and we will be first taking 3 speakers and then question answer session for almost 15 minutes, and then again 2 speakers will speak, and then again question answer session for 15 minutes, and then the concluding remarks. Just to speak about the objectives. So as we all know that raising land inequality is very serious issue, and we need to speak. And in Asia, it's like long history of land alienation and inequality, and it's like across different countries, and it's important that we get different practitioners, what are the situations, so we discuss about it and then go to the experts, what are the solutions, possible solutions adopted by different countries in the region, and there are the local experts who will be telling us about that. Anindita will be putting that survey link also, so I request all of you to take the survey, and so yeah. So our first is speaker is Julia, and she is based out of Italy, and she is working as a knowledge management expert, and she is basically a social scientist also, and she is also leading the database section. So now I request Julia to speak, and she will be going to speak for almost 5 minutes.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Anand. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be starting this session with a brief introduction on the collaborative research on land inequality that ILC, together with Oxfam, has coordinated last year. The title of the initiative is Uneven Ground, Land Inequality at the Heart of Unequal Societies. I'm going to say a few words about this collaborative project, and then something about the findings to introduce this session. So first of all, as I said, it's been a collective effort, drawing from the richness of the ILC network, with the participation of a number of research organizations, civil society organizations, and also external partners, such as, for example, the World Inequality Lab. We have supported the development of 17 papers based on the existing research and new research of the partners involved. And they have covered all world regions. And the initiative culminated with the synthesis report that we launched last year. You can find all these documents, all these papers at this link at the bottom of this slide. you're welcome to go and have a closer look. So first of all, why did we decide to focus on land inequality? Why does land inequality matter? To start, land inequality, as I will show in a minute to you, is growing in most countries. Secondly, it is definitely higher than we thought if we look at the data, and it threatens the lives of around 2.5 billion people who live from the land around the world. Thirdly, it is linked with other forms of inequality and global crises that we experience currently, such as climate change, global health security, mass migration, democracy crisis, unemployment, and intergenerational injustice. As you can see from the figure here on the right, land inequality, we've put it here at the center, is part of a number of vicious cycles, let's say, that really bring to these inequalities and crises. And finally, land inequality is also connected with other forms of inequality and discrimination based on gender, ethnicity, and culture, again, in a vicious cycle that further exacerbates land inequality and the other way around. So I said that land inequality has increased, is an increasing trend in all regions. As you can see from the graph, land inequality since the 80s has been increasing in all world regions. If you look specifically at Asia, Asia and the Pacific is the light blue line. You can see that it's a growing trend. In other regions, there was a decreasing trend that has been reverted. So overall, it is now a growing phenomenon. And also in this collaborative research, we have used new methodologies that actually look at, first of all, survey data and not only census data, going beyond the Gini index that is normally used to measure inequality. We have also looked at the value of land, not only the size of land, and also factored into the calculation landless people. And as you can see, when adding all these elements, the figures of land inequality go up everywhere. So if we look at Asia in particular, for example, you will see that if we also look at land value, which is the light blue column, the light blue bar, it goes, the value goes up by 14%. And if we also include landlessness, so people who don't own any land, the value goes even more up by 30%. And to look in more detail, we can see that South Asia, together with Latin America, has got the highest levels of inequality, with the top 10% of landowners capturing up to 75% of agricultural land, and the bottom 50% owning less than 2%. And here you can see that China and Vietnam, for example, were put separately because when looking at the data, we have seen that China and Vietnam appear to be less unequal due to the land reforms that were implemented throughout the recent history. But definitely South Asia, together with Latin America, is one of the two most unequal regions in the world. And this is not it. If we also look at so-called hidden inequality, we can see how this phenomenon is even more concerning. Because we don't only have to look at ownership and evident forms of land inequality, but also dig deeper and see what the unseen drivers of land inequalities are. So if we look closer, we can see how today a number of practices such as contract farming or corporate concentration of land ownership, or also the increasing role of financial market that just use land as a financial asset make the situation even worse. So the scenario that is in front of us is even more opaque, and the concentration of land and control over land is even more severe. So I won't spend time to go through the various solutions that we have identified by looking at good practices and specific country cases where different approaches have been put in place to halt land inequality or to make its effects less impactful on people. Because here in this panel, we will have two speakers who have directly participated in the collaborative research, and that will speak in more detail from the perspective of the Philippines and Vietnam about collective land rights and inclusive food value chains and agroecology. I will just conclude by saying that this collaborative research has really shown that land inequality is a concerning phenomenon, that the data show us that the situation is even worse than we imagine, and that there is an urgent need to act really by transforming power relations and allowing us to also address other forms of inequality. So I will stop it here, and I really look forward to hearing more from the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. As you rightly said, land inequality is the basis of different other inequalities. And if we address the issues related to land, we are going to solve problems associated with our lives in other areas. Thank you. And I request different people, if you have questions, please write in the chat box. And after Julia, our next speaker is Mylene. She is the coordinator of Asia or Farmers Association, and she is from Philippines. And she has been working in the field of environmental management, public health, sustainable agriculture. And Mylene, if you can focus on how the large-scale land acquisition is contributing to land inequality, then it will be really great. And regard to it, what is the situation in Southeast Asia, and what exactly you are addressing it with the land matrix initiative? So our interest will be around that, and we have got around 8 minutes to enlighten us.
Thank you very much, Anand, to everyone for inviting our organization, the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, in this learning lab session for this year's Asia Land Forum. So large-scale land acquisitions, let me just share my screen quickly. Large-scale land acquisitions, or LSLAs, involve the transfer of rights to use, control, or own land through sale, lease, or concession. Given that land is a valuable but finite natural resource, LSLAs have the ability to drive land inequality, as desire for profits and investments can lead to the systematic dispossession of ordinary citizens, especially the poor and marginalized sectors, of the land that serve as their homes and they use for their livelihoods. LSLAs are often justified on the basis that the land being taken are idle or marginal. However, it is well documented that much of the acquired land is already under local use. This means that communities are threatened to lose lands or forests or natural resources that they need for their livelihoods. In return, they usually receive little compensation and only precarious employment opportunities. LSLAs can also lead to the destruction of the environment and natural resources, which farmers and rural communities are highly dependent on, as well as the destruction of cultural and social values, especially when customary lands of indigenous peoples are at stake. There are also instances when fraud or force is often used to acquire the land, with consultation and ethic process often lacking. It is particularly concerning when government policies and state-run companies enable the acquisition and transfer of lands to attract foreign investments and to shore up tax revenues. So what are we doing right now in the Land Matrix Initiative? First, let me introduce our initiative to you. So LMI is an independent land monitoring initiative established in 2009 to promote transparency and accountability in regards to LSLAs in low and middle income countries. Looking at the database as of this morning, Apha, as the regional focal point for LMI, have entered and updated 1,670 deals spanning 17 countries in Asia. Negotiations for almost 80% of all deals have been concluded already, while the rest are intended and failed deals. In terms of implementation status, there are 901 deals that are currently in operation. More than 50% of the recorded deals, shown here in orange, were pursued with the intention to use the land for agriculture, to grow food crops, biofuels, non-food agricultural commodities, among others. So while the global LMI report entitled Taking Stock of the Global Land Rush has noted that LSLAs have slowed down after 2013, the pendulum may as well swing back again as economists try to recover from the COVID-19 induced economic crisis. So what are the impacts of LSLAs in the region? Well, we could look at the experiences Apha has had in documenting and analyzing the existing deals in the database. One example is Apha's assessment of land investments on palm oil plantation in Asia. So far, we found that the most number of palm oil plantation investment is in Indonesia, covering more than 6.5 million hectares of land. Practically all of these investments were launched by private companies. We also observed that the linkages and ownership structure of investors can be complex and difficult to trace, as seen here. Some of the biggest companies has operated very early on and has later expanded through mergers and acquisitions and through a network of local subsidiaries. These investments have brought serious consequences to the environment as exemplified in the deals here. The rush to grab land has exacerbated the conversion of cropland and rainforest to cater to the rising demand of the market. The result is compounding to our worsening climate and poses greater susceptibility to disaster risk. Unfortunately, these risks are disproportionately felt by the poorer countries and within those, the poorer section of the population. The adverse environmental effects derived from the palm oil industry are intensified by the complex socioeconomic problems. Local communities are heavily exposed to health and safety hazards. Security also deteriorates due to the internal and external conflicts that arise from the shifting power relations. The palm oil industry has also been heavily criticized for its precarious and exploitative working conditions due to highly unstable and irregular labor contracts with no security of tenure. It also leads to the exploitation of women and seasonal migrant workers by increasing the dependency to the cash economy. The presence of palm oil plantations is greatly associated also with displacement and involuntary settlements. The dire need for land area drives investors to acquire territories housed by existing local communities. The negotiations to gain concessions of land are often conducted between the investors and the state, thereby alienating local communities in the decision-making process. More often, deals are negotiated without proper consultation with the affected population, or if there exist, are done only for mere compliance with little adherence to legitimate process. In many cases, the victims of displacement are indigenous peoples whose ancestral domains are often targeted for the abundance of their natural resources. Customary lands are of paramount importance to indigenous people because it is where their culture, tradition, and identity are intricately tied. The same story can be found in other areas in the region. In the Philippines, the National Land Observatory hosted at Pakisama, an ILC member, show how LSLAs disproportionately impact marginalized groups. In the case of the LSLA in Bugsuk and Pandanan Islands in Palawan, IPs were displaced from their ancestral lands, including their traditional fishing grounds, to pave way for a hybrid coconut plantation project and a pearl farm. The call now is to recognize the claims made by the indigenous groups on their ancestral land and to expedite the processing and distribution of lands, especially those who were forcibly removed from their homes. Another LSLA of current concern is the construction of the Kaliwa Dam, which aims to eventually provide 600 million liters of water per day to the nation's capital, at the risk of the biodiversity and the local community. The Kaliwa watershed is declared as a forest reserve, and a portion of it was declared as a national park. Infanta, Quezon, home to 84,000 residents, may eventually be submerged because of the project. Sedimentation would also destroy the coast and the marine life, and portions of the Raitan, Tanay, Rizal, which serve as the reservoir for the dam, may be submerged over time, leading to loss of land or farm area, properties and crops, and loss of access to the ancestral lands of the Dumagat Remontado. So here at LMI, aside from the desk research in updating the LSLA records, Apha and Pakisama assist communities in advocacy mapping to show policymakers and the general public about how LSLAs like the Kaliwa Dam and the Bugsuk LSLA will impact their communities. Right now, we are working with communities at the Aurora Pacific and Economic Zone and Semirara Mining to do the same. So I guess to end, we encourage everyone to visit the website with the URL shown here. And if you know any LSLAs in your area, please contact us so that they will be included in the database. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mylene. The whole issue of indigenous communities, either in palm oil plantation or mining, like recently I met a family and they were like 3 times displaced from their natural villages, and so it's like more or less the similar kind of stories, especially when we talk about the indigenous peoples and how we are like treating their customary rights just to exploit the nature. It's thought-provoking, and we should constantly talk to our policy makers. Thank you, Mylene, again. So from Philippines, we'll be now moving to the Himalayan country, Nepal. Dharamraj Joshi is our next speaker, and he is a facilitator, land governance working group, and also ILC's national engagement strategy. He's facilitating the multi-stakeholder platform on people-centered land governance called the Land Governance Working Group. So I now invite Dharamraj Joshi to speak.
Thank you, Anandji. Good morning, good afternoon to all the participants from Nepal. I am Dharamraj Joshi. As we already heard from Julia and Mylene, we have a kind of global and regional picture about land inequality. And now I will be more focusing on the land inequality scenarios at the national level with reference to Nepalese context. So in Nepal, if you look at the social setup, the majority of the society and its population are agrarian, and they require land, water, and forest and other natural resources to sustain and to maintain. If you look at the distribution of these natural resources, especially land as a life-saving asset, there are many many different types of differentialities, and there are huge gaps between those who have land, especially elites, and those who actually work on the agricultural land for food, but don't own enough land to sustain even for their families. So these are resulting from the exclusionary policies, because if we look at the policy level development, I have many times already mentioned that in my previous speakings also, we have significant type of policy progress at the national level regarding land governance. But when it comes at the practice, there are few impacts that lead toward land equality that positively impact to bring the poor and landless people above the poverty line or their landlessness. So in this scenario, if we look at the efforts of 7 or more decades of the government, that we are not finding so much progress on establishing land justice. So what we are facing again is that with the introduction of new policies like Land Use Act and land policies, they are more pro-market oriented, and they are driving the entire land governance system to under the capitalist approach, and they are promoting big concentration areas like industrial areas and other type of areas. And recently, in the earlier this month, we have a vicious, severe conflict in the western part of Nepal, in Rupandey district, and where landless people and the police fought, and poor landless informal settlers who came there with a hope to get land were shot dead on the spot. So such type of I think this type of death related incidents are not much, but I think it is the first case in our case. So this type of incidents are increasing, and at the root of at the heart of these problems being increasing are those policies which are not well implemented at the ground, but because those who are at the policy implementation level, those seats are captured by landed people. So they don't want so easily to institutionalize or legalize land ownership by poor peoples, indigenous peoples, women, and other agricultural laborers, because if they provide land to those, that really changes the power structure of the society, and that shifted the power from those landed community to the so-called landless people, and that will eventually transform their situation, and that will also increase their bargaining powers, their voices at the policy making and decision making levels related to land and natural resources. So these things are, as we move forward, these things are being increasingly being contexted, and they are in becoming inevitable to invite frequent conflicts at the societal level. If we further elaborate or to further make a picture a little bit clearer, that I want to provide some data. If you look at the Gini coefficient, the measure of land inequality for Nepal, it is 0.51. So it is very high. And if we look at the land distribution scenario, around 50%, exactly 53% of the agricultural household who own below 0.5 hectare only own a total of 18% out of total agricultural land. And while if we look at the big landholders who constitute 4% of agricultural household, they own more than 20% of land, agricultural land. So we can imagine that the land inequality in Nepal is growing day by day, and the further evidence that is surfaced from the global land index initiative that we piloted last year also shows that Nepal has around 53 score out of 100 points for land governance. And from these scores, what we can claim that there are a lot of rooms for improvement to establish, to promote and protect, to promote people-centered land governance and promote people's land rights, and advocate for secure tenure for all. In our land governance system also, it seems a little bit gendered in a sense that the majority of the share over land, if you look from the perspective of ownership or from the perspective of decision making, we find that the majority of the space is occupied by the male. From the gendered perspective. So though there are many good policies that promote women's land ownership, at the grassroots level, we are not seeing we are seeing the progress at the very slower pace towards this end. So this scenario, I stop here, and I will be happy to address if other queries from the participant, then I will come back again. Thank you, Anand.
Thank you, Dharmaraj Bhai. I think you rightly raised all these issues from Nepal, and I think all the civil society organizations can play a role, especially for as fact-finding team involving human rights organizations. I know these are like really very difficult tasks. Recently, in my home state, around 400 indigenous people walked for 300 kilometers. They reached at the state capital demanding to cancel power, the coal mines for one company, you must have heard, Adani. And they met the governor, they met the chief minister, and when these indigenous communities reached their home back in their village, the central government gave the final order to start the mining. So that was kind of cruel joke right on their face. So it's a very challenging situation in most of countries. So now we will open question answer session for almost 15 minutes. And for Julia, I saw that question. Yes. So would you like to respond, Julia, or speak? I think you've written it.
Yes, I've just responded in the chat, but maybe I can expand a bit more. So the question is about the role of the government in determining this situation of land inequality in many countries. So what I've just responded is really that indeed there is a very strong connection between land inequality and political inequality. So especially when the power is in the hands of elites that already control large amounts of land, it is very difficult to revert the situation of land inequality and also push for policies that can really benefit the most vulnerable smallholder farmers or landless people. So unfortunately, there is a vicious cycle that really makes the policies always go to the benefit of the usual suspects. No? So it's extremely challenging to change this. And the question comes specifically from a young person. So I think really youth definitely have a very important role now in changing this, because they are the next generation of leaders. So I think by becoming aware of these dynamics and acting differently in the future, they can for sure improve things. And at the moment, I think it's important to raise awareness and advocate with governments to choose fairer policies.
Thank you, Julia. And I encourage other people to come out with questions, clarifications, comments to any of our speakers. Now the floor is open, and this is an opportunity to discuss and learn from other people who are practicing in different parts of Asia.
Sorry, I saw Maria raising her hand, and if you would like to speak up.
Okay, yeah. First, my name is Virginia from the Union of Catholic University Student of Republic of Indonesia, and I would like to say thank you for the opportunity. Just want to more explain about what I asked with Julia. I mean that I realized we as a young generation didn't have a lot of power to to keep maintain the land inequality, because that government have a lot more of powers that we as a young generation maybe have a little bit of skills or maybe powers that we can do more than that. And I know that raising awareness could be extremely a best option for our young generation. Is that just I realize if there is some issues that is confront in front of us and we can help them, because due to the government authorities, what would be your opinion? Thank you.
So I'm going to add maybe something else also. I think in connection with the presentation from Mylene on large-scale land acquisitions, for example, something else we have highlighted in our research is the importance to advocate for more transparency and also more accountability of investors. That is also another important area where we think change would be necessary. For sure, I mean, youth are in a very interesting and powerful position. At the same time, they have been the victims, and they are not very often the victims of inequality as regards land and also of other forms of inequality. So it's an extremely challenging position, and I really appreciate your enthusiasm, Virginia, and thank you very much for raising this.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Virginia. Mylene has raised her hand.
Yeah, thank you, Anand. I just want to quickly add to what Julia mentioned and to answer Maria's question. I think the youth is such a vibrant sector, and there are a lot of contributions that it can do. So for raising awareness, we all know the power of social media, and the youth are very active on that. And the social media can be used not only for awareness raising, but also for organizing as well, because it allows us to network to different types of people. Youth, even policymakers are in social media right now. So it sort of brings them sort of closer to us and enables us to advocate for many policy issues, including those that are related to land. And with the energy of the youth, I think it would also be, you will also play, because I'm also a youth, we will also play an important role in also empowering the local communities. I feel like we could contribute on research, on organizing meetings, networking, and so on, so that whatever issues are happening in the ground right now, they're not just limited there, but they're able to reach a wider audience. So for us, now our responsibility as young people is to put ourselves there and see what opportunities, what platforms we can join or we can establish ourselves in order to do that. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mylene. And definitely, it's like if we meet people in village, and then especially the younger generation, the urbanization thing is very high, that they are ready to bribe for any smaller job, and they really want to because the whole situation in the village and for agriculture is kind of driving against the crowd, or like rowing your boat against the wave. So it's like full of problems you face. So agriculture is especially about young generation I'm talking, they are ready to go to the city and look for a smaller job rather than going for agriculture as for their forefathers or foremothers. So it's our responsibility to speak to our policy makers and convince to make policies which is in favor of agriculture, minimizing land inequality, and create opportunities for young generation within their village or within their vicinity, rather than creating kind of a cheap labor for capitalist or like that kind of industrialist. So this is just I thought to share with you. Any other questions, comments? Oh, so Saraswati has written, it's a request the panelists to throw light on land inequality in terms of women's land rights. Yeah, so that is such a big issue. Like, despite government efforts and civil society's work, it's one area where still we are lacking. And despite government's order, it's like only land is getting in the name of their male family members. So any Dharamraj or Mylene, anyone?
Thank you, Anandji, and thank you very much, Saraswati for this very relevant question. Yes, in the context of rural agrarian societies that are dominant in India and Nepal and other South Asian country, we can easily discern that majority of the agricultural roles are played by women. And if we look from the perspective of food security and other agriculture related work, also we find mostly women's they are playing majority of the role, but their works are not much recognized. So when the one who don't have enough sufficient land ownership, right, and the sufficient power to decide over that asset, in such situation, they may not be able to contribute as much as they can when they are provided with decision-making powers and ownership. And if in the recent scenario surfaced by the COVID-19 pandemic, we can easily sense the situation of the rural women, who are especially the single women and the women who are leading household work in the context when their male counterparts are away from home for jobs and etc. In such situation, there are growing risk of food insecurity. They are sensing because of the limited mobility and mobility for buying agricultural inputs or selling their products in both ways. And another one, they are also living with the anxiety of debt. Mostly the women are operating on the loans that are informal and associated with the high interest rate. So in such situation, they are also living with the greater anxiety because their income sources are limited by the pandemic itself. And another one is the failure of crop. Because we in the South Asian part, we recently witnessed the untimely flood. We can call it a sudden impact of the climate change that many of the part of India and Nepal and also other countries, they at the time of harvest, when the major food crops are ready to harvest in the farm, the entire farmland are swept away. So in this the loss of crop is not only resulted on the income loss, but also on the livelihood loss, and it is pushing them further in the vicious cycle of landlessness and poverty. So these are these kind of extreme events, climatic events are also impacting women, those who have less secure land tenures. Because each and every types of disaster and other conflict or any other events that will have a disproportionate effect and of which the majority of the part and the bigger burden will be borne by the poorest and weakest and marginalized community. And at this point, the women farmers are at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Dharam. Yeah. So we will be moving to our next session, we can say, and now will be I will request Ken to speak, and he's the director of Systoma from Vietnam, and he has been working in the last 10 years on very intensively on land issues, and his vibrant experience on promoting equal access to land rights for the marginalized communities on one side, that is kind of grassroots implementation, and second is like more on policy and practices and law and like discussions with the policy makers. So he has got very intensive experience. So can we would like to learn from you, like the whole land inequality in the agri-food industry in Vietnam. So if you can share with us how this inclusive food chain is like kind of great tool to address this kind of challenging issue, and what are the kind of solution Systoma has come out, and your interesting paper. So now the floor is yours for next 8 minutes.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Anand, for the introduction. Probably I would like to share the screen on the presentation that I have made, so that to ease my talk. So this is part of the solution paper that we work in collaboration with Oxfam and International Land Coalition. So basically, before coming into the papers, I would just like to give a quick, probably a little bit about the history of land in Vietnam. Do you see my screen, please? Okay. So historically, Vietnam has gone through quite several land reforms, in which the latest one was during like 54 of the 21st centuries, in which farmers were given quite equal access to land. The government took over land from different landlords and allocated it equally, relatively equal to all the farmers, with the principle of land to tinners. So another fact is that in Vietnam, agricultural land is quite limited. We have only 27 million hectares, and you can imagine it's limited to almost 30 million household of farmers. The land size for each family is very, very small. And we could say that in tiny parcel. So in the history, this way of this allocating land had contributed significantly to improving the food security for Vietnam in the last decades. However, with the growing economy, the small scale holding expressed some of the limitation. When people want to move toward large-scale commercialized agricultural commodities, and now in Vietnam, government is trying is on the process of revising land law and other policy documents. And one of the very, very strong advocate or influencing advocacy is pushing government towards easing the condition for land concession into larger scale for agriculture commodity production. So this way of movement is creating a very high risk to the smallholding farmers, where the social safety net in Vietnam is quite very limited, and it's if the government going towards this direction, many farmers would be facing the risk of losing their land. So in this solution papers, we are trying to bring the evidence from the field that farmers are working together, smallholding farmers working together, and they are performing well. They make the land use effective. So through this, we try to bring the evidence of, okay, smallholding farmer is playing significant role in the agriculture production, and they remain effective regardless of the farm size that they are holding. This is a small imagination about how, for you to see how influential different private sector is putting on the law drafting team in Vietnam. So this is what we are trying to find the ways to challenge the very big powers that putting their influence to the policymakers. In the papers we presented 4 cases, but here I would just like to bring you to the 3 of the example. The first example is about the group of small farmers who produce vegetable for domestic market. You can see here the land size for this 13 farmer is very, very small. They have only like less than 0.3 hectare for each farmers, and they used to produce very minimal productive produce in this field, and mainly used for feeding. And then when they come together into the cooperatives, they maintain working on their own farms, but then they joining to produce the organic farmer following the PGS system, which is a kind of high quality product, but targeting the domestic market. So through this way of collaborating, they could significantly reduce the external input. They produce organic matter by themselves. They could reach to the market of high quality consumers, and they sell the product with higher price, higher income, and more importantly, with this small livelihood for each of the household, they could secure the regular incomes of this household who are joining the cooperative. In Vietnam now, there are quite several groups like this cooperative. There are like almost 100 groups of farmers who join together to produce this kind of organic vegetable, and they sell to more than 100 outlets in the cities within the coordination of the PGS coordination body at the national level. Another example is about the cooperative in Central Highland province. They produce coffee. This cooperative, they used to be applying the conventional practice, which is heavily dependent on the external inputs. But then they found out that if they keep on producing this way, they will lose on the benefit, and most of the investment will go to the payment for fertilizers and pesticide. And when they come together, 30 farmers with 45 hectares of coffee, they join together and they try to follow agroecology friendly practices, and they got the fair trade certificate. For these farmers, although they are small, they only have 50 hectares with around less than 100 tons of grain a year, but then they're targeting the global market. And they also do packaging and processing by the cooperative. And via this collaboration, they could recover their land fertility, they reduce pest and insect, and of course, they reduce the investment into external inputs. And their selling was like 30 to 50% higher than the normal market price. They have wholesale, contracted wholesale to different dealers across the world, including the very high demanding market like US or in Europe. Another example is the Dam Phat, the cooperative. They also produce organic pepper. This group of farmers, they have like a small number, but their area is a little bit larger, around 3.5 hectares each, and they produce pepper and coffee. They also maintain their own farm, working on their own farm, but collectively they work under the cooperative supervision in terms of technical inputs and also the connecting with the market actors. And for this one, they got the third-party certificate, particularly the USDA organic standard, which is a very difficult standard for organic food. And with this, they are able to sell their products to the global market with a sole wholesale contractor. And also by this collaboration, they reduce production cost, having more stable yen with 20 to 30% increase, and also they got 30 to 50% of the profit. So throughout the three examples, we're trying to bring the argument to the other actors who are advocating for demolishing of the home-based farming system in Vietnam and move toward the large-scale concession by the companies. Our argument is that in the very complex system of the food chain domestically and internationally, there are different layers that we need to target. And if we could find the ways to work with the farmers and then find the ways for the farmer to collaborate, we could remain a smallholder farmer as effective as any other player in the agricultural sectors. So the first pathway is we are proposing that we need to reshape in the beneficial ownership in the value chains, in which so that the farmer would get more benefit from the activities that they are performing. Then they will remain effective with a limited pieces of land. And via this evidence, we can bring the example of alternatives to large-scale concession. It is that the fact that yes, all those farmers they are very small in the farm size, but they could produce also larger volume of quality products for the consumption market. Yes, this is with the performance of the farmers, we could challenge the argument of other big actors. That's that if you come to Vietnam, most of the case, if you join any workshop about agriculture production, even here repeatedly people saying that okay, smallholder farmers are ineffective. We have to move toward large scale. We have to let the company to invest in agriculture so that make it more effective. So if we could, the farmer could perform well, if we could convince that they are effective, they can make the land also productive. So there will be less pressure on the policymakers to in front of the influencing actor who want to move toward the removing the condition for large scale concession. And lastly, at the policy level, we try to convince the policymaker that the role of smallholding farmer must be recognized in the food system and also in the development of the agriculture sectors, not only relying on the large scale or the big investors, so that the government could bring the more appropriate direction towards the law revision in order to protect the smallholding farmer from losing their land to large-scale concession. So these are the example and the analysis that we try to bring into the discussion via these solution papers. Okay, thank you. And yeah, I think that is for me, and we're happy to discuss further on the more detail.
Thank you, Kat. It's very interesting about especially about this last slide, that enabling political institutional environment. And in my home state, the state government has decided to buy cow dung, and it's like unbelievable, but they are buying cow dung at 2 rupees per kg, and which is creating jobs at the village level. Women SHG groups are making organic manure and selling it to the farmers. So moving ahead, Andita, can you move the slide? Yeah. So our next speaker is Mr. Royal, and he's from Philippines, and he is at the St. Xavier Science Foundation, also with the university. So we would like to hear you from you, sir, that the whole struggle of indigenous people, and then about your solution paper. It looks like really very interesting. And one of my friend was saying, like, even if we can work on free prior and informed consent with our government and companies, then for the communities and for the indigenous people, that will be one big step. So we would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Anand, and good day to everyone. We have heard from the past speakers how serious the problem of land inequality in the world. And I think we should really do something about this problem. Unfortunately, the situation is getting worse. And I think we need to support more programs like the ones presented by Trong Can on how we can empower the communities, the farmers themselves, in order to address those issues. What I would like to share with you, what I will be sharing with you, is the struggle of an indigenous people in Mindanao, Philippines. They are called Talaandigs, on how they were able to regain their ancestral lands. The study will narrate the struggle in terms of their being displaced and in regaining control based on the longing for a more equitable society grounded on equal access to land. Mindanao, until the late 1800s, has been largely unoccupied. The situation, however, changed when the Philippines was ceded to the Americans. The Americans introduced the Torrens title of land registration, anchored on the Regalian doctrine, where all lands are declared to be the property of the state. So starting in the 1940s, the Philippine Commission instituted resettlement policies and programs to facilitate the movement of migrants to Mindanao. It also enacted the Public Lands Act of 1903 that facilitated the entry of investors, especially agribusiness corporations. Next slide, please. The Talaandigs community, they are known to be peace-loving and industrious people. Unfortunately, their peaceful living was challenged by the entry of powerful ranchers and rich businessmen. They were pushed to the hinterlands and living in poverty. They sought assistance from the government, but the promises remained unfulfilled. With the downfall of the dictatorial regime and the installation of a democratic government in 1987, a number of milestone legislations have been passed in Congress on distributive agrarian reform. On ancestral lands, a landmark legislation was enacted in 1997, titled Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, or IPRA, recognizing the rights of indigenous peoples over their ancestral domains, and provided for a process of titling lands through the issuance of the certificates of ancestral domain title. Given that policy background, the Talaandigs tried to redeem their ancestral land. So this is their story. First is that they did a lot of advocacy work also. The Talaandigs, with a new policy environment and the enactment of TIPRA, they organized themselves into an organization called Milalitra. Milalitra advocated for the land rights of indigenous peoples. It was one of the first communities in Mindanao to apply for a CADTI. And after several consultations and the submission of required documents, the CADTI was awarded to them, to Milalitra, in 2003. And the CADTI has empowered the community, Milalitra, in governing its lands. Then they also have to address the problem among the communities themselves because of the many challenges in governing their ancestral domain. This covers like more than 11,000 hectares of land, and they have to, in a way, provide their effective implementation of their plans in accordance with their concept of development. Towards this objective, Milalitra adopted the social tenure domain model, which is actually very applicable to developing countries having very little cadastral coverage. It intends to focus on all relationship between people and land, regardless of their formalization or legality of those relationships. The implementation of STDM in Milalitra's ancestral domain was made possible through the initiative of the Global Land 2 Network and the Asian NGO Coalition for Agrarian Reform and Rural Development and Xavier Science Foundation. The other area also is that the Milalitra's ancestral domain is a critical landscape situated in a watershed that regulates water supply for a number of cities and municipalities downstream. So by protecting the forest and other resources of the ancestral domain, the indigenous peoples community also serve the downstream communities by stabilizing their water supply. After a devastating typhoon or tropical storm that claimed lives of thousands of lives of people, they instituted what we call the Payment for Ecosystem Services, a financing scheme anchored on pricing intangible environmental products and services. In the process, these institutions, government, private sector, civil society organizations now recognize the important contribution of Milalitra in ensuring environmental integrity. And not only that, they were also supportive of the tenurial security of Milalitra over their ancestral domain. So some lessons. Well, Milalitra's journey in regaining control of their ancestral domain provides a pathway for other indigenous peoples. Some of these lessons could include the need for policy advocacy, for inclusive reforms in land administration, also the need for policy, the need for strengthening its own community resources, and in engaging other stakeholders in governing their landscape. So with that, I think they are moving forward and towards improving what they have already regained. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Royal. That was like really thought-provoking, like payment for ecosystem. That is kind of one big step in that sense, and there are not many such success stories that the state has recognized that kind of rights of indigenous people. So we will open for question answer session, especially to our last two speakers. So I haven't checked if there are questions in the chat box. No. So anyone who is having questions, comments, please do speak, share your experience. This is like your forum to come and share and learn and listen both. So first you can ask question and then other people will also ask to you. So Andita, anything we have missed? If there is like people thinking about or thought process is going, so anything you would like to share on the whole organization thing? Anything if I have missed?
Thank you, Anand. So apologies, it's raining really hard here. I hope I'm audible. My audio is clear. Thank you, Anand. So we also have this Google Doc going on, and I've shared the link in the chat. And some people there are also expressing their thoughts if they are interested in in being involved in any activity relevant to land inequality research, capacity building. I saw some people here like Najib Durrani from Pakistan. I don't know if she or he is here. In the Google Doc, Najib said that
Yes,
they would like to learn more. Yes, if you want to speak up, Najib, maybe, yeah, I can give
yes,
the floor
I
to you.
have. Thank you very much. This is my first time to attend this forum, and I've shared my views on the Google Doc. I've personally been affected by the land equality problem, and I'm doing a research on this with this issue. I've been successful so far in advocacy and challenging the land administration department in Pakistan, and they are taking action when approached. And the idea of the problem over there is that the people have the civil society has no awareness about this subject. The knowledge of land and its documentation processes and are non-existent. And especially being a male-dominated society, we are seeing a lot of women and youth being deprived as they don't know the challenge and they don't understand it. So, and I don't think ILC has some chapter in Pakistan, but 72% of the population is impacted by this problem, and would be definitely worth exploring because a major impact can be achieved in this country. And we have similar identical problems like India and Bangladesh because we follow the same British colonial land administration system. So there must be a lot of learnings from between these three countries. Thank you. Any questions I can respond.
Thank you, Najib, for sharing the situation in Pakistan. So ILC, in fact, has one member in Pakistan called Scope. Maybe we can discuss separately. And Scope is also one of the most active members in the regional initiative on Indigenous peoples. So yeah, we have taken your interest in further expanding the research of land inequality in the country, and we hope to be able to collaborate with you more. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we don't have much time actually, but maybe we can give the floor to one more person. If you have any comments or questions to any of the panelists here, feel free to unmute and speak, or use the chat box if you prefer. Anyone? Don't be shy. Okay, I think I assume everything is crystal clear. So before we close, Anand, would you like to take back the floor again? And I don't know, maybe instead we want to give the floor to any of the speakers, just one more person to give a closing remark or any comment to all the questions that have risen. If any of the speakers would like to speak for one more time, just to conclude.
Maybe I will, Andita, if you
Yes,
allow.
Julia. Yeah.
say
Yes.
something? Thank you very much, all. It's been extremely interesting to listen to the various manifestations of land inequality and approaches adopted in the different countries of the Asia region. Definitely, especially when it comes to solutions, let's say, approaches can be very different from country to country. So that's why it's particularly enriching to have the various specific perspectives. Thank you to those who contributed to the Google Doc. Actually, the reason why we had thought a Google Doc could be an effective way to engage is that we are looking to maybe continue this effort to understand the phenomenon better. So we will see how to carry this forward. And to those who have included their information about what they're doing and their details, I really hope that we can continue discussing with you. So thank you very much for your views and your contributions, and I give the floor back to Anand. I hope you found this topic interesting. It is for sure very important and complex, so happy we could have some discussion around it. Back to you, Anand.
I think there is some problem. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay then. Because I think Zoom is not getting enlarged. So it's good if you can hear me. Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, good, great. So I want to thank all the speakers and participants. Definitely the whole issue of land inequality is very serious center to our work, and wherever you go, it's like always land comes first. I would like to request, and maybe perhaps I would also like to do it. Please write in your national or regional languages about land inequality issue, so you can reach to new people who are not aware or not connected to your work. That way we will be talking to new people, and definitely the policy makers. It's really very important that we go and meet to them about our issues, land inequality, and whatever other issues, and especially the bureaucrats also, because they are all the time in the power. So here we are going to end today's session, and I hope you all the participants have enjoyed and learned new things. And again, I would like to thank the whole team at the ILC responsible for this event, and all the speakers. And please do attend the main program, Asia Land Forum, which is till 29th of October. And we would like to share the whole recording and other solution papers as a kit. So Anandita will follow up with all of you. So Andita, if there is anything from your side.
Thank you, Anand. Yes, so the session is ending. Thank you everyone for participating. We would like to go back to the plenary room now. So I think everyone here in this room has already had the Zoom meeting link from the previous session, from the plenary session. So we will go back there to the plenary room just for a few minutes for a closing remark and to wrap up the day, and also a little bit of information for tomorrow, the next day. I will share another generic meeting link to go back to the plenary in the chat box. So I will keep this room open just until you are equipped with the meeting link that I shared here. When you enter, probably you will need to name yourselves, but we have prepared for this, and we have prepared the settings for this as well. So yes, either you go back to the meeting, the link that you received previously, or you can use this one. Thank you again, everyone.